to IEA. I'm Lauren Burtz. In today's topic, we'll be taking a close look at Indigenous wellbeing in education. Viewers, while the program is running, jump onto our Twitter page and leave your comments at #IEA. Please welcome our panel of experts, Neil Harrison.
Hi, Lauren.
Author of Teaching and Learning in Aboriginal Education, Brenda Dobia from Kids Matter, and finally Susan Dowse, one of the program designers of Focus Today, Enhancing Wellbeing for Indigenous Learners, a resource for teachers.
Thanks, Lauren.
We have already learnt from our previous shows the importance of education in the Indigenous communities, and this program today will be specifically focusing on how wellbeing enhances education. To provide our viewers with some background knowledge on our topic today, the Queensland Government is committed to providing safe, supportive, inclusive and disciplined learning environments that provide educational opportunities for all Queensland students. This means building school communities where all students feel a strong sense of belonging, all students learn to interact respectfully with others, all students learn to understand and appreciate diversity, and all parents and carers in the community can take an active role in the life of the school. And would you agree with these beliefs, panel members?
Absolutely, Lauren.
Inclusive education within Education Queensland fosters a learning community that questions, disadvantage and challenges social injustice, maximises the educational and social outcomes of all students through identification and reduction of barriers to learning, especially for those who are vulnerable to marginalisation and exclusion. And finally, it ensures all students understand and value diversity so that they have the knowledge and the skills for positive participation in a just, equitable and democratic global society. Okay, let's move to our first panel member. Neil, you have a real passion for Indigenous education. Can you share some of those experiences with us?
Hi, Lauren. Well, I've been teaching Indigenous education since 1978. On my first teaching position, I was placed at a school called Nabulwa, which was 600 kilometres southeast of Darwin. I walked into the school having no prior knowledge of the culture or the children I was walking into.
So that sounds like a lot of stories I've heard. What did you do?
It does. A lot of starting teachers with little or no will teach in Indigenous cultures and they have little or no knowledge about them. I was put into the school 2 days before term. I stuck to my chalk and talk method and I got through those 2 days just. But I quickly learned that learning styles of children I was teaching were greatly different to the children I'd taught in the past.
We'll be back after this short break, viewers. Welcome back, viewers. So Neil, what advice would you give to new or unexperienced teachers when they find themselves in the same or similar situation?
Well, Lauren, I'll break my answer into two parts. Firstly, you cannot teach all children the same and expect them to reach the same outcome. A document that was not developed when I started teaching, but that should guide teachers today, is the Melbourne Declaration. This document states that teachers must ensure that learning outcomes of Indigenous students improve to match those of other students. Also, directly related to Indigenous education in the Melbourne Declaration, states that teachers must provide students with access to high quality schooling that is free from discrimination. I'm not saying this, Lauren, just to state policy, but to say that teachers, it is your responsibility to adapt to teach Indigenous learners. That they deserve the best education that you have to offer, as I'm sure that you're all aware of. The second part is to do your research. As new teachers, we often think that we have to reinvent the wheel. This isn't so. Do your research on Indigenous learning styles and how important community is, and more importantly, what we're discussing today, Indigenous wellbeing. We need to keep these children engaged in school. We need to make it relevant to them, their culture and their learning styles. Did you know that school attendance in preschool and primary schools decreases as remoteness increases? For example, 31% of 3-year-old Indigenous children living in major cities were reported to be attending preschool, while only 14% of 3-year-old Indigenous children were in preschools. This doesn't improve as the children progress through their schools. From the ages of 15 to 17, the attendance rate in all areas falls from between 33% in major cities to 39% in remote areas. This is as little as 16%.
Wow.
Of Indigenous students aged 17 that are still in school. Only 16.
That's some shocking statistics.
It is. We need to make schools a place where the students not only need to go, but they want to go. As you'll discover through research, that some Indigenous children do not see education as an investment for their future, nor will they ever. We need to examine all the factors that influence learning and schools, and we need to strive to improve them.
Thanks, Neil. That was very insightful. So let's move on to Brenda Dobia, representative from Kids Matter. Brenda, are you able to share your views on how wellbeing is linked to education?
Certainly, thank you, Lauren. Education Queensland developed the Learning and Wellbeing Framework and was implemented in 2012. This framework clearly states that learning and wellbeing are inextricably linked and that students learn best when their wellbeing is optimised, and they develop a strong sense of wellbeing when they experience success in learning. This policy document also outlines that wellbeing is enhanced when it is embedded in the curriculum and taught by the regular classroom teacher.
So how can educators assist Indigenous wellbeing?
Well, firstly, I can certainly agree with Neil on the fact that teachers must do their research when entering a classroom with Indigenous learners. However, there is currently limited information and resources to assist educators in promoting Indigenous wellbeing. Virginia, my co-author, and I also noticed this gap, which resulted in the development of our article promoting the mental health and wellbeing of Indigenous children in Australian primary schools. Educators will certainly benefit from resources such as the ones Susan has to share with us today.
Why is there a focus on Indigenous mental health?
Indigenous Australians collectively face much higher levels of health risks and challenges than is found amongst the general Australian population. Indigenous Australians are also more likely to experience disability and ill health, which in turn have further negative impacts on quality of life. In a survey that was recently conducted, 70% of Indigenous children had experienced 3 or more major life stress events in the last 12 months prior to the survey. And 22% of children have experienced 7 or more such events. Now, you might ask, why are these statistics important? It's because research shows that Indigenous children's exposure to family stresses increase their vulnerability to a range of risks to their well-being and is coherent to the broader evidence base relating to risk factors for children's mental health.
Okay, so how can educators use this information in schools to promote wellbeing for Indigenous children?
Well, Lauren, we all need to be made aware that education has a vital role in addressing Indigenous wellbeing issues in both short and long term. In order for optimal learning to take place, social and emotional wellbeing must be promoted within educational settings. This discussion of educational settings and their impacts on Indigenous students demonstrates the fundamental need for positive support for social and emotional well-being within schools and classrooms. Without ongoing cultural competence development by educators, there is considerable risk that schools and classrooms will not be appropriately supporting the social and emotional needs of Indigenous students and thus may create a negative impact on the well-being and learning outcomes of all Indigenous students.
Okay, thanks for that, Brenda. That was really insightful. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. Now, finally, we have our last panel member, Susan Dowse, one of the 4 designers of the program in focus today, Enhancing Wellbeing for Indigenous Learners, a resource for teachers.
Thank you so much for having me here today on your show and for giving me the opportunity to share what I believe is an effective resource to address some of the concerns that we've discussed here today. Now, our resource, Enhancing Wellbeing for Indigenous Learners, is a resource for teachers of Indigenous Australians. It can be described as a bank of information for educators and is complemented by effective teaching strategies and considerations to be made. The resource is readily available and easily accessed online. The beauty of this resource is that it is absolutely free, as it has been completely funded by the Kids Matter organisation. So please allow me to take you through the resource.
Now, how can educators access this, Susie?
I encourage all educators to visit the website at www.wellbeingforindigenouslearners.weebly.com.
Oh, we've just received some tweets from our Twitter page, so keep them coming, viewers. Viewers, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you can join us next week. Bye.